The offer email sits unopened for 6 minutes. You already know the number in the first paragraph because the recruiter says it twice on the phone, as if repetition can make the decision easier. £95,000 base. Equity that might be worth nothing or might change your life. Hybrid, but nobody really means hybrid when the company is growing this fast. We need someone who can build quickly, think commercially, and own the AI layer end to end. You tell yourself it is just another engineering job. It is not. You are 28, tired of building features nobody remembers, tired of watching old classmates move into jobs with better titles and sharper stories. Some of them are suddenly AI leads. Some of them post photos from conference panels and write threads about agents, inference costs, and the future of work. You tell yourself you do not care about status, but you check their profiles anyway. You tell yourself money is not the main thing, but your rent goes up. Your parents ask whether you are settled, and your bank account keeps reminding you what ordinary ambition looks like in an expensive city. The startup is not profitable. It is not stable. It has raised a large seed round, hired fast, and promises to turn a boring industry into an AI product category investors can understand in one sentence. The founders say the market is enormous. The recruiter says the team is lean. The engineering manager says you will have real ownership, which usually means the company does not yet have enough people for the amount of work it wants done. You open the email. By the end of the night, you accept. The first thing you learn is that almost nobody outside tech understands what an AI engineer actually does. They hear the title and picture some mix of genius, math prodigy, and machine whisperer. They think you spend your day inventing sentient systems or building the future from pure thought. In practice, your first week is less glamorous and more stressful. You read product notes, skim old architecture diagrams, clean broken datasets, fight with permissions, test third-party model APIs, and sit in meetings where people use the word agent to describe things that are mostly workflows held together by prompts, retries, and hope. You write Python. You write TypeScript. You write evaluation scripts. You design prompts that work beautifully in a demo and fail in production the moment a real customer asks a badly phrased question. You compare embeddings vendors. You measure latency. You argue about whether to fine-tune, whether retrieval is enough, whether the output needs a second verification step, whether the support team can survive one more week without guardrails. You spend more time reducing uncertainty than building magic. That is the real job. The office tells you what kind of place this is before anyone does. There are expensive monitors, cheap chairs, whiteboards already full when you arrive, and half-finished conversations about runway, churn, and model performance. The founders move fast because they are afraid of slowing down. The product team talks about urgency like it is a virtue instead of a permanent state. Every person here seems to believe they are early to something big. That belief powers the room. It also makes everyone impatient. On your third day, a founder asks you how quickly you can ship a prototype that lets customers upload internal documents and ask natural language questions against them. You say 2 weeks if the scope is controlled. He smiles in a way that means the scope will not be controlled. You stay late that night because you want to look like the kind of person who can handle this. Then you stay late the next night because the retrieval quality is weak.
If you don't mind taking a second, please like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated.
Then you stay late the night after that because the demo is tomorrow, and nobody remembers whether the customer data is formatted consistently enough to trust the outputs. This is how the life begins. Not with one dramatic sacrifice, but with small unspoken ones that barely feel like choices when you make them. The money feels different almost immediately. Your first pay cycle lands, and you stare at the number longer than you should. It is more than you have ever made. Not absurd wealth, not the kind that changes your postcode overnight, but enough to make your life feel less narrow. You replace the dying laptop you used for personal projects. You stop doing mental arithmetic in the supermarket. You take your parents to dinner and pick up the bill without pretending it is casual. This matters more than you like admitting.
But startup money comes with startup psychology. The salary is real. The equity is a story. You learn to speak both languages at once. Cash is what pays for the life you live now. Options are what justify the hours, the pressure, and the belief that you are not just employed, but positioned. The founders speak about upside, the way some people speak about destiny. If things go well, your paper equity could become meaningful. If things go badly, it becomes a line on an old offer letter you stop mentioning. You do not stay because of the options alone. You stay because the work is addictive in a very specific way. AI engineering gives you short feedback loops and constant novelty. The models improve, regress, change pricing, get rate limited, gain features, lose reliability. Nothing stays still long enough for complacency. Every week, there is a new benchmark, a new framework, a new promise that this release changes everything. Part of your job is technical. Part of it is resisting hype without falling behind. By month 2, your day has a shape. You wake and check messages before you leave bed because something may have failed overnight. You tell yourself, this is temporary. It rarely is. You get into the office or log on early, review logs, inspect weird outputs, trace failures through prompts, retrieval chunks, model responses, and orchestration steps. You join stand-up. Product wants the assistant to feel smarter. Sales wants it more demo-friendly. Support wants it less fragile. Security wants guarantees nobody can honestly give. The founders want speed. Customers want certainty. The models offer neither. You learn that being good at this job is not the same as being the best pure programmer in the room. The people who last are rarely just coders. They are translators. They can speak to founders without sounding defensive, to product without sounding vague, to customers without overselling, and to the rest of engineering without turning every disagreement into ideology. You need judgment more than brilliance. You need taste. You need to know when a model is good enough, when a bug is actually a product flaw, when a hallucination is tolerable, and when one confident wrong answer can destroy trust. The hidden rule of startup AI work is that capability matters, but reliability matters more. Anyone can make a demo look impressive. The real value is making it behave on a bad Tuesday with bad input from a tired user who does not care how difficult your backend is. By month 4, you stop feeling like the newcomer. People ask your opinion before they decide things. Your name gets attached to the AI roadmap. The founder who used to explain the vision to you now asks whether the roadmap is technically credible. This feels good in a way that is hard to explain to anyone outside the industry. Status in startups is subtle until it is not. Nobody says you are important. They just start waiting for your answer. You also stop leaving on time. The pressure gets more personal when your work touches revenue. One large prospective client wants an enterprise pilot. It is the kind of account that shows up in investor updates and changes hiring plans if it lands. The sales team promises a level of document accuracy the current system does not actually achieve. You know this. They know it too, if they are honest. But in fast-growing companies, honesty often gets filtered through timing. Problems become things we can solve post-pilot. Risk becomes an execution detail. You spend 2 weeks building extra validation layers, confidence thresholds, and fallback behavior that sounds less magical but fails more safely. You start understanding why people in this field burn out, even when the compensation is strong. It is not just the hours. It is the constant state of partial incompletion. There is always a version not yet shipped, an issue not yet solved, a capability almost ready, a benchmark almost good enough. You are never really done. You are maintaining a moving target inside a company that treats speed as identity. Your social life narrows without announcing itself. You miss a birthday because of a production incident. You arrive at dinner already half absent because a founder is still typing in the group chat. You date someone briefly who likes the idea of what you do more than the schedule that comes with it. When they ask if things will calm down after lunch, you hear yourself say probably, and you already know you do not believe it. The outside perception gets shinier, while the inside gets heavier. Friends hear AI engineer at a fast-growing startup and respond like you have cracked some secret code. Recruiters message you more often. Your LinkedIn profile starts attracting a certain kind of attention. People who ignored your work a year ago now ask for advice on breaking into AI. They want courses, roadmaps, salary numbers, shortcuts. They ask whether they need a master's degree. They ask whether prompt engineering is enough. They ask whether the field is oversaturated. You tell them the truth in the shortest version possible. The good roles usually go to people who can already build software well and can now layer model behavior, data pipelines, evaluation, and product judgment on top of that. You do not need a PhD for most startup AI engineering roles. You do need substance. You need to understand APIs, model limits, data quality, debugging, and system design. You need enough statistical humility to know when your result is probably misleading. Most importantly, you need to tolerate ambiguity without becoming sloppy. That part never makes it into the glamorous posts. Around month 8, the company gives you a raise. It is not life-changing, but it is validating. Your base climbs above £110,000. There is talk of title progression if the next quarter goes well. The founders start discussing you like someone they need to retain. That word matters, retain. It means you are no longer easy to replace. It also means the company now has a claim on your ambition. The more valuable you become, the harder it gets to stay psychologically detached. You begin to feel the split identity this career creates. Part of you is a builder, part of you is an operator, part of you is becoming a business person whether you plan to or not. The code matters, but the code is never the whole story. You think about inference costs per user, gross margin, sales friction, onboarding time, enterprise security reviews, and what features investors will understand in a pitch deck. You start looking at technical decisions through a commercial lens because everyone around you does. And because eventually, you realize that the people who rise fastest in startups are rarely just the best engineers. They are the ones who reduce business risk. This is one of the real career advantages. If you survive long enough, you do not just learn AI systems. You learn product, persuasion, prioritization, and how companies actually make decisions. After a good year in the right company, recruiters stop pitching you ordinary software roles and start pitching staff-level AI jobs, platform lead roles, and compensation packages that once sounded fictional. But the downside compounds too. There are weeks when every output you look at feels slightly wrong and none of the fixes are clean. There are moments when a founder asks for certainty you cannot provide, and you hate how defensive your own voice sounds. There are nights when you reread customer complaints and realize that a feature you argued to release early is now hurting trust. There is a particular kind of fatigue that comes from doing intellectually demanding work inside permanent urgency. It does not look dramatic from the outside. It looks like being successful and slightly unavailable. Then the company hits a growth spurt. The product actually starts working well enough, often enough, for the right customers. Renewals improve. New logos come in. The engineering team doubles. Suddenly, you are mentoring people. You review pull requests from engineers who are where you were 9 months ago. Smart, eager, technically capable. And you explain why evaluation matters more than impressive screenshots. You explain why one silent failure can undo 10 strong demos. You explain why AI products are not just call the model and ship it. You hear yourself and realize you have become an insider. That change is satisfying. It is also dangerous. The better you get, the more work gravitates toward you. Competence does not buy peace. It buys responsibility. Your health starts negotiating with your ambition. Not collapsing, not breaking, just negotiating. Sleep gets lighter. Exercise becomes something you reschedule instead of protect. You keep telling yourself the next release will create breathing room. Sometimes it does for 3 days. Then a new goal appears and the room disappears with it. This is where the job quietly reveals who it is really for. It is for people who genuinely like building under uncertainty. It is for people who can take abstract systems, messy data, shifting model behavior, and commercial pressure, and still make practical decisions. It is for people who can handle prestige without becoming addicted to being seen as early, sharp, and indispensable. It is for people who can make peace with work that is partly engineering and partly controlled chaos. It is not for people who need stable boundaries, predictable output, or the feeling of being finished at the end of the day. You start measuring the career differently. One evening, long after most people leave, you sit in front of a dashboard that finally looks healthy. Latency is down, error rates are acceptable. The latest release does what it is supposed to do. A customer who nearly churned has renewed. The founders are upbeat again. You should feel triumphant. Instead, what you feel is quieter, not disappointment, Not pride exactly, recognition. The job gives you a sharper mind, a stronger market position, better money, a better story to tell, and access to rooms that once felt above your level. It also takes your attention first and asks permission later. It rewards ambition and then feeds on it. It makes you more capable and less available at the same time. You think about the version of yourself who opened the offer email months ago. That version of you wants income, momentum, identity, maybe even a little envy from other people. That version of you thinks being an AI engineer at a fast-growing startup means stepping into the future and getting paid well to build it. That version of you is not wrong, just incomplete. Now you know the work is less about feeling futuristic than making unreliable systems useful enough for real businesses to depend on. You know the glamour sits on top of lots of debugging, compromise, experimentation, and communication. You know the salary is good, the upside can be real, and the career ceiling is high for people who become technically credible and commercially literate at the same time. You know why so many engineers want in. You also know why some of them leave after a year and say they want something calmer, something finished, something less hungry. Your phone lights up with another message from the founder. Not a disaster, just a question about the next release and whether a feature the sales team wants can realistically ship this month. You already know the honest answer is complicated. You also know you will answer anyway. You close the laptop for a moment and look at your own reflection in the dark screen. The role fits you more than you expected. That may be the most dangerous part. You are good at this. You like being good at this. You like solving problems other people cannot yet solve. You like that the market rewards the skill. You like that when people ask what you do, the answer still carries charge, but you finally understand the trade. The money is real, the status is real, the learning curve is real. Outside, the city keeps moving, as if nobody is choosing anything irreversible. Inside, your work waits for morning, and morning always comes faster in jobs like this. You pick the laptop back up, not because somebody forces you to, because this life, with all its strain and speed and unfinished edges, has already started to feel like yours. That is what being an AI engineer at a fast-growing startup actually feels like. Not magic. Velocity with consequences.